Good morning. You're listening to The Brief Wake Up, your mindful start to the day. I am Handel, your daily coffee companion, helping you wake up informed, thoughtful, and maybe just a little amused before the day gets old. If you're commuting, corralling kids, or just standing in line for caffeine, you're in the right place. Let's get you caught up. As we wrap up the year, our health segment on The Brief Wake Up takes a step back, not to chase headlines, but to look at what actually moved medicine forward in 2025. This wasn't a year defined by one blockbuster cure or overnight miracle. Instead, it was a year of real advances, the kind that quietly change what's possible for patients, clinicians, and health systems alike. Across neurology, surgery, pain control, diagnostics, sleep medicine, and transplantation, 2025 didn't just add new tools, it raised the ceiling. And once you see the pattern, it's hard to unsee. Let's start with the brain. Earlier this year, a patient with ALS became the first person to control an iPad using thought alone, thanks to an implanted brain-computer interface. No hands, no voice, just neural signals translated into action. This isn't science fiction. It's early proof that independence can be restored even when the body fails. That theme keeps repeating. For decades, diagnosing Alzheimer's disease required spinal taps or advanced imaging. This year, the FDA cleared the first blood test that can help identify Alzheimer's pathology with over 90% accuracy in symptomatic patients. That means earlier diagnosis, faster access to treatment, and primary care finally entering the fight instead of waiting months for specialty care. Pain management also crossed a long overdue threshold. For the first time in more than 20 years, the FDA approved a non-opioid medication for moderate to severe acute pain. This drug has effectiveness comparable to weak opioids, but without addiction risk. In a country still reckoning with the opioid epidemic, that matters. Sleep medicine followed close behind. A once-daily pill for obstructive sleep apnea showed nearly 50% reduction in disease severity, offering a future where CPAP may no longer be the only option for many patients. And then there's transplantation, one of medicine's hardest problems. This year, researchers finally identified why gene-edited pig kidneys fail weeks after transplant, and more importantly, how to detect rejection before damage occurs and reverse it using existing therapies. That discovery moves xenotransplantation from theory towards scalability, with real implications for the organ shortage crisis. Surgery itself also crossed borders. In a first-of-its-kind FDA-approved trial, a surgeon in Florida removed prostate cancer from a patient 7,000 miles away in Angola using robotic telesurgery. Precision surgery without geographic limits isn't just impressive. It's a potential equalizer for global health access. And finally, perhaps the most hopeful story of all, a baby born with a lethal metabolic disorder survived after receiving a personalized CRISPR gene edit, tailored to his exact mutation. He went home. He took his first steps. That's not incremental progress. That's a new playbook. So here's the takeaway as we close out the year. 2025 didn't just advance medicine. It quietly reset expectations. Care is becoming earlier, less invasive, less addictive, more precise, and more humane. As we turn the page on 2025, these breakthroughs remind us that the most meaningful progress in health doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives patient by patient, problem by problem, quietly changing what tomorrow looks like. The news is next. In this morning's headlines, the Trump administration is withholding federal childcare payments to Minnesota citing ongoing concerns about fraud in state-administered assistance programs. Federal officials say the pause affects hundreds of millions of dollars in childcare funding and will remain in place until Minnesota provides additional documentation and completes expanded audits of providers receiving federal money. According to the administration, the move follows a series of high-profile fraud cases in Minnesota over the past several years, including pandemic-era programs, raising concerns about oversight, verification, and enforcement. Federal health officials say they are demanding proof of services rendered, attendance records, licensing compliance, and inspection data before releasing further funds. They argue the freeze is about accountability, not punishment. Minnesota leaders strongly disagree. Governor Tim Walz called the decision politically motivated and warned that the funding pause could disrupt childcare access for working families across the state. State officials say Minnesota has increased fraud detection efforts and is cooperating with federal investigators. The funding freeze comes amid a broader national debate over how aggressively to police social service fraud and whether halting payments during investigations risks harming families who rely on childcare assistance. Supporters of the administration say systemic fraud requires systemic response. Critics argue withholding funds before final findings shifts the burden to families and providers not accused of wrongdoing. Payments remain frozen as audits continue. No timeline has been announced. Before we close this segment, Tatiana Schlossberg, the granddaughter of President John F. Kennedy and an environmental journalist, has died at age 35. Her family said Schlossberg passed away after a battle with acute myeloid leukemia. She was known for her work on climate and environmental issues and for publicly sharing her diagnosis in a recent essay. She is survived by her husband, their 2 young children, and her extended family. Tatiana Schlossberg was the granddaughter of John F. Kennedy, a family long defined by public service, intellect, and moral responsibility. But what made her life especially meaningful was that she did not rely on legacy. She built her own. She chose journalism over politics, evidence over rhetoric, and long-term environmental stewardship over short-term attention. In many ways, she represented a quieter evolution of the Kennedy tradition, service through truth-telling, and influence through ideas rather than power. At just 35, she was part of the generation meant to carry that legacy forward, reframing it for a world facing climate instability, environmental degradation, and intergenerational responsibility. Her death is not only a personal tragedy for her family, her husband, and her children. It is a loss of potential, of a voice still forming, a bridge between past and future that will now never fully be realized. For a family whose history is so often marked by promise cut short, this loss resonates deeply. We remember her not just for who she came from, but for what she stood for and for the work she was still meant to do. Tech and culture is next. For our tech and culture segment today, let's talk about wormholes and how Stranger Things uses them in a way that's actually more precise than most science fiction. In Stranger Things, the Upside Down isn't just a place you travel to through a wormhole, it effectively is the wormhole. It's not a distant planet or parallel universe reached by a clean portal. It's a distorted, overlapping layer of reality, a space created by a rupture in space-time itself. The gates don't lead somewhere else. They open into a warped in-between, and that framing matters. In real physics, wormholes aren't imagined as stable tunnels with doors on either end. They're unstable, poorly defined regions where space-time is stretched, folded, or broken. In theory, that folding of space-time could allow 2 points in the universe, separated by vast distances, or even by time itself, to connect, potentially permitting passages between worlds, or even time travel. If one existed, it wouldn't feel like stepping onto a highway. It would feel wrong. That's exactly how the upside down behaves. It mirrors our world, but imperfectly. Time behaves oddly. The environment is hostile, and the boundary between worlds is thin, fragile, and dangerous. From a storytelling perspective, that's closer to how theoretical physicists actually think about this extreme space-time phenomena. The physics inspiration comes from Einstein's theory of general relativity, which allows space-time itself to curve and fold. In theory, that math permits structures called wormholes, shortcuts connecting distant regions, or even overlapping realities. But there are limits. We've never observed a wormhole. Most models suggest they would collapse instantly unless stabilized by exotic conditions or energy we don't know how to create. And if such a structure existed, it wouldn't behave predictably, which again is very Stranger Things. The show treats the upside down less like a destination and more like a scar, a consequence of human interference with forces we don't fully understand. It spreads, it reacts, it pushes back. That's why wormholes work so well here culturally. They represent boundary violations between worlds, between childhood and adulthood, between safety and danger. The science gives the idea credibility, but the emotion gives it staying power. And while real-world wormholes remain theoretical, the questions behind them are very real. How flexible is space-time? Can realities overlap? And what happens when we punch holes in systems we barely comprehend? So when Stranger Things uses the upside down as a living, unstable wormhole, it's not teaching physics, it is also respecting it. And that's why the idea sticks. The lighter roast is next. For today's lighter roast, let's talk about family planning, or more accurately, the seasonal suspension of it. Because every year, without fail, one month quietly dominates the birth calendar, September. In fact, multiple population studies show that September is consistently the most common birth month in the US, which means a disproportionate number of babies are being conceived in December and January. And no, that's not a coincidence. December is when routines collapse. Work slows down, schedules loosen, people travel less, stay indoors more, and suddenly have time they don't normally have. Add in colder weather, shorter daylight hours, holiday gatherings, nostalgia, and alcohol. Biologically speaking, conditions are favorable. Researchers have actually mapped this out. Conception rates spike during the winter holidays, then taper off as normal routines return in late January and February. 9 months later, September. Predictable, reliable, and annual. And what's funny is how surprised we pretend to be. Every fall, pediatric offices get slammed. Daycares see enrollment surges. Elementary school classrooms end up with clusters of September birthdays, sometimes a third of the class. Parents wonder, wow, what are the odds? The odds are excellent. We like to tell ourselves these outcomes were carefully planned. And sometimes they are. But statistically speaking, a lot of this is less strategic family planning and more holiday conditions met. More time together, more relaxed boundaries, more optimism about the future. And that's not a criticism, it's just math. So if you know a lot of September birthdays, now you know why. They're not early, they're not late, they are seasonal. Our commemoration is next. Today is December 31st, a date that doesn't celebrate beginnings as much as it honors endings. In New York City, the Times Square ball drop has marked the turn of the year since 1907. What began as a practical replacement for fireworks became a shared ritual, a collective pause before moving forward. Across the Atlantic, December 31st is known as Hogmanay. In Scotland, it has long been the most important holiday of the year. centered on reflection, renewal, and the belief that who or what enters with you into the new year matters. It's also the birthday of John Adams, a founding figure who believed that democracy isn't sustained by speed or spectacle, but by discipline, institutions, and responsibility over time. A fitting reminder on the final day of the calendar. And today in 1869 marks the birth of Henri Matisse, who proved that even as life narrows our options, creativity can expand. Reinventing his work later in life when multiple abdominal surgeries for cancer limited his movement and rendered him mostly bedbound. And in some years, December 31st does something even more symbolic. It becomes the day when time itself pauses through a leap second, a single added second to keep our clocks aligned with the planet beneath them. Tonight, as the calendar turns, time itself pauses, just for a moment. Because Earth's rotation is slowly drifting, we add a single leap second to keep our clocks aligned with the planet beneath our feet. It's a quiet reminder that even our most exact systems still answer to the world we live on. So December 31st isn't just the end of a year. It's a moment of synchronization between history, culture, creativity, and time itself. Before the calendar turns, the world takes one last breath. As we close out today, and this year, we saw how progress in health often arrives quietly, how science and culture keep asking the same big questions, and how even our calendars remind us to pause before moving forward. From medical breakthroughs to wormholes in fiction, from holiday traditions to the way time itself adjusts, today was about reflection more than resolution. Thanks for starting or ending the day with the brief wake-up. Have a happy start to the new year. May 2026 brings more fortune and less grief than 2025. Stay calm, kind, and curious. Catch you next year.